Bishlut Harav. Um, so, what is there left to say after 19 years about Grandma Maisie? Right? That could be quite. Yeah, well, yeah. If we let my mum, if we give my mum a go, we'll be here all night. Absolutely. But very quick thoughts. Her name obviously was Esther Malka, which lovely Avia, Benji. Yeah, and Benji's sister or sister-in-law. It's named after Grandma Maisie, Esther Malka. And in fact, you have Esther and you have Malka. And so let's just think about those two things for a moment. Esther really means hidden. And what was hidden was Hadassah. Hadassah is kind of a humble type of a twig that comes from when we live, we know that it's the humblest part of it. And this is hidden by the fact that she had to go and present herself as a Malka to Achashverosh. And there is an additional kind of thought around that hiddenness in the Gemara. She's also referred to as somewhat of a greenish complexion, and one might have thought she may not have been picked as a queen, and yet she had this ability, it seems, to communicate to the person that she was with what that person actually needed. And so this was kind of, if you will, part of the hidden qualities that she had. And but at the same time, she knew how also to be a Malka. She was a queen. And really, without going into too much detail about Grandma Maisie, I think the characteristic which was most important and relevant to us as grandsons was it didn't matter who called her. She always knew what the right thing to say, what that person needed at that moment. As far as the grandson was concerned, we were the only grandson that counted. At least it was true for me. I don't know about you. Whoa. Exactly. But nobody could possibly mistake anything other than the fact that Grandma Maisie also was a queen. And she was the queen bee, and she kind of set the tone and looked, was very proud of everything that was to do with her family. One final thought, I was looking for grandma mentioned in the Agadah. It doesn't get really much of you get a lot of mother stuff, but not too much grandmother stuff. The only thing which sort of was closest is that Rachel is crying for the children that she never saw, which normally would mean they weren't actually her children, and therefore maybe some kind of metaphorical grandchildren or all of her tzeitzim, and she's crying for them because even though she never knew them and she never met them, she obviously she represents the fact that she always is worried about them. And I think we can all identify with the worries that we carry for all the people that we don't know and the many people that we do know who need our prayers. And Grandma also, she was always thinking about others and worried about other people, and that's a very important characteristic for grandmothers in general. So with that, I will hand over to Rabbi Brovender and take a sort of more seat on the affair.
Thank you. We thank Daniel for the introduction. The amazing thing is that we've been doing this for a long time. It's really amazing.
Thank you.
I may not recover. So the sheet really has two shiurim, two different shiurim, which would be able to put together, but I'm afraid that we miss out on the second shiur. We don't start from that. So I'm going to do that, even though you have to look at the bottom half of the sheet first. And the bottom half of the sheet is the Torah of Nachman of Bratzel. And it's also appropriate, all those Bratzel of Hasidim are stuck someplace in some country where they don't like them. And there's a revival, right? There's no doubt that Bratzel, Hasidut Bratzel, which was pretty much non-existent in Europe before World War II, has been rejuvenated. And people are very proud to call themselves Pratzel Hasidim and do whatever it takes to get to Uman and Rosh Hashanah. Because Rabbi Nachman said something or didn't say something. But my own personal history with Rabbi Nachman and the Likutei Moharan is that, I was once a Rosh Yeshiva of a yeshiva that existed with real people in it. Today I'm a Rosh Yeshiva in a yeshiva that's electronically generated. So who knows what it is that is at the other end. But in those days when I was Rosh Yeshiva of a yeshiva of people, so you knew you had to have a little bit of alternative forms of entertainment. Just learning Gemara all day long didn't always cut it. So one of the things that I discovered was that right next door to the yeshiva, which was then on Shterot HaMeiri in Yerushalayim, one of the things that I discovered was that right next door to us was Mosad Rav Kook, which is a major publishing house. And in Mosad Rav Kook, there was a guy who was an expert on Chassidut. Now, even though I was told at some time in my development that my family in Europe, the families I came from, were Hasidic, which is something that happened to a lot of people, but I didn't actually believe it. But I went to this fellow, whose name was Porish, and asked him if he would come and teach in the yeshiva, and he did. The first Torah that he taught, which I participated in out of curiosity, because I didn't know exactly what would happen, the first Torah that he taught was this Torah that I'm going to teach tonight. I'm going to try to teach, called Kra et Yoshua. The book, Likutei Moharan, is divided into two parts. There's the first part, and after the first part is the second part, which up to now is not that remarkable. Like people learn Chassidut, they think they're going to levitate. They're waiting for that. Call me when we levitate. So he taught this Torah that we're about to teach. I want to remind you that we are on the eve of Yom Kippurim, literally. Tomorrow night is Kol Nidre, which for most people is what Yom Kippurim is. That's when it happens, at Kol Nidre. It may not be, it's hard to defend that position, but it's definitely a position that many, many Jews have. So the words that I think of when we hear that Yom Kippur is there, it's coming to get us. The words that have to be considered are tshuva, which loosely translated into repentance, tshuva, and more important, I think, even than tshuva, at least reflected in the tefillah that we daven, is vidui, confession. Now you know that the Rambam, at least according to some interpreters, but the Rambam is the one who told us clearly, without a doubt, that the mitzvah, the commandment that we have to fulfill on Yom Kippurim is not called tshuva, but is called vidui. The Rambam said it, and he said it again and again and again. And we know that vidui on Yom is very, very substantial on Yom Kippurim. We say, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, right? Remember that? It's like soon, it's coming up soon. It's good if you remember. You remember the tune? Okay. I'll give you a pass on the tune. But it's a strange thing we say. That's called vidui akatsar, the short vidui. And then there's also the long vidui. We say al chet shechatanu lefanecha. That's long. B. And then we list every possible avera that's in the book, and it also, it's a little annoying, is it? Not that I want to claim that I'm a remarkable or a righteous person, but I do not think that I did every one of the transgressions that are listed in that list. I don't know who that list is for. I don't know anybody like that. So this idea of vidui has to be explored somewhat. We have to understand or try to understand what the connection between tshuva and vidui is. Tshuva means I do it in my heart, and vidui means I do it with my mouth. I say it. And vidui is very prominent on Yom Kippurim, as I try to point out. And that prominence of vidui on Yom Kippur as being the essential act, at least according to the Rambam and others, but the Rambam was the kind of the originator of this idea, that what we do is, if we don't say it, we didn't mean it. We have to say it. We have to say what's and so if you ask me, why do we say so many viduyim? Why do we confess to everything in the world that's imaginable? So the answer, my answer, the way I understand it is, that we tend to overlook our deficiencies. I mean, we're not proud of them, of things that we do wrong. And our response to doing things wrong is often hiding it, pushing it away, removing it from our consciousness, not being willing to admit that we were wrong about something, not wrong about how we treat our children, not wrong how we treat our neighbors. We don't like that. We like to say, I was right, he was wrong. And the pain that I may have inflicted in different ways doesn't kind of get prominence. So along come the Chazal, and Chazal say, well, you've got to be forgiven for things that you're pushing away, the things that you're not interested in, not talking about. So how do you get to that? How do you get to be forgiven for things? So Chazal said, well, the vidui is going to help. Because since I have to say it out loud, the Chazal say, well, you say everything, and in that everything that you're saying, they're the things that you've forgotten, ignored, overlooked, denied, and try to impress yourself with the fact that you are a wonderful personality. So that tshuva is modified by vidui. Tshuva is like a bad feeling. Like I feel like I'm not getting along with all the things that I should be getting along with. But vidui is when you say, I did something wrong, and if you forget it, and if you didn't mention it, and if you didn't go for it, it's in the list. It's in the list. Not only is every word mentioned, but it's all alphabetical. And you know, alphabetical means total. Everything is included. I mean, it's true that alphabet also means it's easier to remember. But in the Chazal's understanding of an alphabet, like Ashrei and other alphabets that exist, Kuf, Yud, Tet, and Tillim, other alphabets that exist, they represent the totality of things. So into this background comes Rav Nachman. And Rav Nachman has something to say about tshuva. And this is how it starts. Tzarich le'achos tamid b'midat tshuva. That's a beginning. Rav Nachman says, we've got to always hold on to tshuva. What is he really saying? I mean, how would we say what Rav Nachman is saying? We would say, you never do enough. You never do enough tshuva. So lechos tamid b'midat tshuva means you've always got to be prepared to do tshuva. I know people think that it's Yom HaKippurim, or it's Rosh Hashanah, or it's Elul, or it's Slichot, or whatever it is. But what it is, according to Rav Nachman, is you're always in a deficiency. You're always in a situation where you haven't done enough tshuva. And that's what Rav Nachman will continue to try to explain to us. Why is it that you're always deficient? You haven't done enough. You haven't tried enough. Why not? I mean, I go to shul, I fast, even though my family tries to get me not to fast. Can't listen all the time to all the people. Too confusing. So that's what Rav Nachman says. Me, Omar, this is how Rav Nachman says what I said. I mean, he says it elegantly. Me, Omar, who can say about himself, Zachiti, Libi, Tiharti, Bechatati, the Pasuk in Mishlei. Zikita, Zach means you're taking out the unnecessary elements from the metal. And Tiharti, I'm pure. He says, who could say what he, because you think, oh, you'll do tshuva and everything will be hunky-dory. But according to Rav Nachman, you can do tshuva, but it's not going to be hunky or dory. It's not going to be anything that you really want to accomplish, because what you really want to accomplish is something pure, is something clean, is something that doesn't have to be defended, something that is the way you really want to be. That's what you say. But who could say that? Ki b'sha'ah sha'adam omer chatati aviti pashati afilu zeh hi efshar lomar bebar levav b'li piniyo. He says, we say chatati aviti pashati, like we cover different kinds of transgressions, different kinds of times or moments when I want to pay attention to the Torah. And we're talking about people who know something and act against it. They act against it. Why do they act against it? Well, I'll give you another story from the yeshiva. In yeshivas, there are always boys who don't go to minyan. Can you believe that? I mean, they daven, but they don't go to minyan. They can't get up. They went to sleep too late. Their grandmothers came to town and had to go here and there. There's always people like that. There are always people like that. So I used to say, not that it helped, but I enjoyed saying what I used to say. I mean, you can't beat the students. That's like a problem that many teachers have. So I say, if you thought that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to go to minyan, you'd go to minyan. So that's a definition of a transgression. What's a transgression? I mean, what is it? Like, where does it come from? Why would I transgress on anything? And the Torah says, don't talk Lashon Hara. So why would I talk Lashon Hara? I mean, what's the big deal of it? I want to talk Lashon Hara. And then there's the Brovender Shalom said, don't talk Lashon Hara. So who should win? HaKadosh Baruch Hu should win, I would imagine. That's what I think. Well, why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu always win? Because we have the capacity, we individually and in communities and in larger communities, we have the capacity to say it's not that important for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is busy. Busy, that interested in my going to minyan. It's not something that has to be mentioned. So that's what an Avera is. An Avera is diminution of the authority of the Torah. We're not talking about people who are not connected to the Torah. We're talking about people who are connected to the Torah, but they still manage to do things for which they have to do tshuva. They manage to do that because they can say in the oddest of ways that God is not that concerned about this particular Avera. So they have diminished their connections to God. And by diminishing the connection to God, because it's possible to do an Avera, to let other forces dominate you. So that's what he's talking about. It's very difficult to say about it, but like a strong-minded person who says that there's nothing can influence him. Nothing does influence him. Who could say that my heart now is pure? וטהור מפניות, אפילו בשעה שעובר חטאתי וכולי. Is this like a repeat of the same thing? That in those days, even though they didn't have a lot of newspaper, they would like to repeat things over and over again. He said, you can't, if you did tshuva, you said, look, I really feel terrible that I did it. But it doesn't mean that you purified yourself, because you only got one problem solved with you. This idea that you're not bringing yourself closer, but you're pushing yourself further away. That's a big idea. And it's very hard to deal with it. Very hard to deal with it. This is how can a person know for sure, even if he's remorseful? He feels badly. He knows he did some averot. He admits he might have done a few more that he doesn't remember. But still, how could he say that he's purified himself? Began God Eidosach with the whole belief Piniyot Kanal. Belief Piniyot, Piniyah is to look aside. Like, you know what God wants. You say, I'll be right back. Just another minute. People, sometimes you can't wait for something. Can't wait. I used to be able to say about smoking cigarettes, but nobody smokes anymore. So he did it against the rabbis. Lipniyot. In such a tzarich lasot tshuva ala tshuva rishonah. This is the classic Rabbi. Why? If you meet somebody who's a brass and a chassid, tell him this line, he'll tell you the whole thing about that. You see what it says. In such a tzarich lasot tshuva ala tshuva rishonah. He did tshuva. He said, okay, I did it. I admit it. I did it. I feel badly about the remorse. I don't want to do it. He says, you have to do tshuva on the tshuva that you did. It's Rav Nachman's invention. What does that mean? You do tshuva. Does that mean anything? A tshuva, tzarich lasot tshuva la tshuva rishonah. Hainu al chatati abiti peshati shamar. So this is the secret of Rabbi Nachman's position. Nachman thinks that your tshuva is affected by the avera that you did. And what was the avera that you did? What enabled you to do the avera? You didn't have such a strong opinion about the relationship between yourself and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You said, okay, I wouldn't mind. God wouldn't mind if I do this. God wouldn't mind if I do that. If one thing is that I do other things, very well. It's okay. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. Nachman said that kind of person does tshuva in accordance with his understanding of the divine wishes and the divine hopes in heaven For me, how am I supposed to be? Well, I'm not up there. I'm not doing really great tshuva. I'm doing minimal tshuva. I'm doing tshuva that is done by people who don't have a lot of respect for the process. I mean, they might do it, but that doesn't mean that they're doing the best that they can do. So by doing tshuva, they created a transgression. Turning to God, imagining that it's not so bad, not that it's so important, that I know when it's really bad. I can do it one way or the other. So what Nachman says, Tzarich la'asot tshuva ala tshuva rishona. I know al chatati, aviti, pashati, shamar ki alav, ne'emar, there's a pasuk. Okay, we could skip the pasuk. Afilu im, I'm in the fifth line, I think. Afilu im nodam, adam ba'atzmo, sha'asa, tshuva, shleima, apopikon. Tzarich la'asot tshuva ala tshuva rishona. So here Nachman says, even if a person thinks about himself, I did it. I didn't wear leather shoes, and I fasted all day, and I was in shul all day, and I said what I can you imagine how many piyutim I said, which I didn't understand. I couldn't even imagine how devoted I was to whatever was going on in shul. He says, but it doesn't matter. You were so far away from your potential relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there's no way that your tshuva could raise you up. And so since the tshuva that you did may have worked for Chatati, Aviti, Pashati, it might have worked, but you're not going to be able to use that tshuva to change you from a person with an avera, the person who's carrying around some misguided idea about a particular mitzvah. You don't have to be that person, but you have to do tshuva, because the tshuva that you did, it might have worked in some regard for that particular event, but it's not ennobling. It's not going to make you into the person you might be. So for Rav Nachman, tshuva was the essential act for the Jewish personality. Tshuva was not a way of dealing with the burden of an avera. It does that also, but that's not the glory of tshuva. If you remember the parsha of Nitzavim Vayelech was last Shabbos, and Nitzavim was 2 Shabbatot ago. So you know, if you remember the 30th chapter of Dvarim in the parsha of Nitzavim, for example, which is called Parshat HaTshuvah. And what does the Parshat HaTshuvah say? That we are guaranteed a future. That the people after Kitavo, after listening to the Moshe Rabbeinu read to them the Psukim of Kitavo, which go through every single possible punishment imaginable, the people hearing that said, what's going to be with us? We've proven, we, the people of Israel, have proven that we don't know how to do it. That was the whole Shmot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, all the stories, and Dvarim repeating some of the stories, that we just don't know how to do it. So what's going to be with us? Along comes this Parshat HaTshuvah, and Moshe Rabbeinu says there's a guarantee. You're guaranteed God will redeem us, will bring us back there. It's Canaan, will make us into a great nation. It's a guarantee. It's a guarantee. The punishments might have to come, but we are guaranteed. We're guaranteed a future. The word that guarantees that future is tashuv. Tashuv, tshuva. That's the word that guarantees the future of Am Yisrael. In the Chumash, that's the way it is. Nachman came to explain to us what that meant. That the Torah is insistent that we will be able to become the people of the promise, the people promised, the way Avraham Avinu was promised that the land is ours and the progeny is ours, and the world will look up to us. That's already in Barim, will look up to us and say, "You're very remarkable people." Not even imagining that they can imitate us. That's the promise. That's the promise of the Torah. That promise is based on the idea that Tshuva could remake the personality, that Tshuva could do it somehow. And that's what Rav Nachman is trying to explain to us. So I say to you again, I think that the idea of Vidui, which is connected to Tshuva, is about trying to dig up the things that we try to forget and express the hope that we have that the future is nigh. And if we do that, Rav Nachman said, we'll be able to do tshuva. We'll be able to get to a perfection in the act of tshuva that we never expected. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure for us.
Thank you for being there.
Merci, Betzalel. Thank you.
Big God, next year, 20 years, you'll be back.
Yeah.